express it, and humans have to use words, have to use, So I want to pivot now to Agnes Martin, right? Again, Ling is the one who introduced me to Agnes
Yeah,
Martin.
she is from my home province.
Oh, really?
It's
Can you
quite
tell us?
it's
Can you
quite
tell us?
funny that you're
Yeah,
bringing her up because she's
yeah.
she yeah she well I mean I didn't find this out till I was in art school, but Agnes Martin is from my home province of Saskatchewan.
I
That's
always
where
thought
she's
she was
born,
American. Now it
uh,
all makes sense.
and she would live. No, she lived there until her 20s, I think, and she was a teacher, school teacher. She went to college and became a school teacher and was working with children, but she was interested in art. And then, yeah, after that, not long after that, she went to the United States to pursue. I think she was still teaching when she went to the U.S. in her 30s or something, and then she kept pursuing her art more and more. Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah. I
was
always introduce Agnes Martin to my students.
yeah. I was watching a late video of her, and how she, again, that same determination. She wanted to express emotions in abstract painting, right? And she would take the same painting, and she would have this vision in her mind. She sees it already. She knows what it is. And then she still puts it out in a big piece of painting. And she would destroy nine before she gets to the 10th, because she was kind of editing. I
Yeah, her philosophy really interesting to get into because she was influenced, of course, by her where she grew up, which is the prairies, the the Great Plains of North America is what it's known as. It's this vast area that is essentially flat, and so it's land and sky. If you rotate your body in 360 degrees, all you see is sky and land. They're like that's very part of that. It's overwhelming. People who come from mountainous areas, other parts of the country, they get a little bit freaked out by that environment because you feel vulnerable, right? You feel small. It's just so open. Yeah, so that's sort of her early influences come through in her artworks. But then she went to New York at the heyday of abstract expressionism. When Jackson Pollock and all these, were going through drunken alcoholic sort of rages and, peeing in the fireplace and stuff like that. And she actually was surrounded by those guys and making work sort of side by side and showing, but she wasn't into that whole scene. It was like a very macho kind of, environment. And so she left New York and went to the countryside, the desert, basically. I think it was the desert or Arizona, somewhere like that, and got a house and just began to continue her work, continued painting her work to the bigger art centers where she had contacts. And yeah, so she, like you said, she edited things from her life, right? That she felt were negative, and that's her whole philosophy in painting as well. It's a very Zen Buddhist approach. Anything that isn't beauty, she doesn't want. So that's the, I guess, the more fleshed out version of her philosophy is she is defining beauty as things that are not violent.
Wow.
Yes, yeah.
Wow.
So that's kind of how she made decisions, right? She would edit things violent. So violent emotions, violent marks, violent, color combinations. She was moving that, letting that philosophy of beauty, that beauty is this transcendent thing that is non-violence. Yeah. So that's
Wow.
kind of some of her, there's of course, more details to that thinking, and it's documented a bit more, but that's what I've gathered.
Oh. You saying that makes me really want to cry. I don't know why. I it's like
Yeah, yeah,
it's like when you wow, because you're like you say, we're
yeah. It's an
we're
interesting
so much
thought.
violence in our expressions, right? And when it's
Mm,
anger, right? And then how when you can overcome that, right? Or you can
mm,
understand it or making decisions, then you become beauty, right? Like Helen Keller becomes beauty. So you don't need all these words. And so that's why I picked out Agnes Martin, because
mm.
you don't have the human words there anymore in the work. You don't have forms, even human forms.
Right.
You can't tell what it is actually. But
Yeah,
if you look at that piece of
it's
work,
very quiet.
yeah, it's so quiet. It's so yeah, we still don't have words for it, right? But she's expressed it, and she's expressed it in art, right? In visual
Yeah,
art.
and that's yeah, what you just said there about not using words. That's something I teach is early childhood arts development in the arts, and that is one of the major benefits of being involved in the arts experience is that it's not most of the time it's not verbal. It's nonverbal communication, right? It's so you're not using words, you're not using written language necessarily, uh, especially in visual arts. It's entirely nonverbal, right? So the communication happens in a, a place that is, yeah, entirely visual and preference based and choice based, and it's like a record of your own sort of inner research and then interaction with the materials and with the moment. Yeah, so it's that's one of the learning points for educators is that it doesn't have to be justified. The making itself, um, you don't, especially the younger, an individual is, the less we should be seeking justification from them for why they're doing what they're doing. You can encourage things. You can show techniques. You can show other artists, but essentially, yeah, it's about accepting that process of making as valuable, right? And it's like a one way it's expressed in some of the literature, some of the research is that it's research. When you draw a picture, it's a form of research, right? Which is, I find very profound in that kind of language, but often not realized or accepted that it
Yeah,
really
yeah.
is that.
So
It's
so Washima, Washima Goyal, our who taught me about pedagogy, right? Uh uh it's she calls it everyday researcher. She always reminds me, that we have to keep it open.
mm, yeah,
But whatever thinking that we have, it cannot be static, right? So